Welcome everyone to another edition of Willow's Weather Briefing. Today is Tuesday, June 17th, 2025. We have a very active day ahead with high-end risks of both severe weather and flash flooding expected with our pattern. We expect a dangerous windstorm along with significant flash flooding across portions of central and eastern Kansas, including cities like Wichita, and we also expect giant hail across these regions. We also have a significant flash flooding risk for southwestern Pennsylvania, including Pittsburgh, associated with near record moisture levels. Multiple days of critical fire weather conditions is expected for portions of the southwest, along with extreme heat lingering in the area, as well as the southern plains. Below average temperatures across portions of the U.S. experiencing rainfall, such as the northwest and central plains, above average for areas experiencing heat outlooks, and generally around average elsewhere. If you would like a text-based briefing, please refer down to the description below. So here is our storm reports from yesterday. As you can see, pretty active day yesterday. We have multiple tornado reports here in Minnesota, especially concentrated near the surface low in central Minnesota over here. We also have multiple hail reports before storms eventually grew upscale, and one storm in particular moved southward, kind of south-southeastward towards the Wichita area, bringing a pretty significant windstorm to this area. Unfortunately, we still have ongoing rainfall over here, and we also have a big risk of a windstorm here today as well. So significant flash flooding and another windstorm expected for these areas as well. Here's our drought outlook. The solid lines demarcate the areas of greatest concern with drought. And here's our current watches and warnings. Pretty colorful today. We have an extreme heat warning here in the southwestern regions of the U.S., also a red flag warning associated with our elevated fire weather risk, and some excessive heat watches over here in western Texas. We currently have some storms moving through the central plains already, some flood watches over here in Kansas, as well as a severe thunderstorm watch over here. We have some storms that have reached severe criteria over here in northern Oklahoma. And as well as northeastern Colorado, there's a severe thunderstorm watch over there, and some severe thunderstorm warnings for some ongoing storms over there. We also have a flood watch for Western Virginia and adjacent states over here in the east, and we also expect some significant flash flooding in these areas as well, especially southwestern Pennsylvania into West Virginia. Here is our surface fronts and sea level pressure. Our main focus for our severe weather and flash flooding threat today is going to be this front. This front will make its way a bit to the southeast due to a low-level disturbance forming along this boundary, and then that will push some cold air down to the south eventually to the Kansas region. We also have a warm front situated over here across the Midwest into the Mid-Atlantic, which will lift northward thanks to this low pressure system up here and will bring us some excessive rainfall to these regions as well. We can see this evolution for later today. This low pressure system will move across the Canadian Shield, bring our warm front a bit north, and this low pressure disturbance down here will shunt our boundary down to the south. By midweek into late week, we have this low pressure system up here into Quebec, Canada, moving off to the northeast. Then we have another low pressure system forming off this boundary, which is going to be our main push of this cold front that is bringing some cooler air down and into the eastern United States, bringing us our severe weather threats for the upcoming few days. Here is our excessive rainfall outlook. As you can see here, we have two areas of main concern when it comes to rainfall. One of them is in Kansas, the same region where we have a peak risk of severe weather, especially here in Wichita, Kansas, areas that have already experienced rainfall yesterday and still ongoing today. Saturated soils and rainfall rates up to 2 inches per hour in these areas will bring that flash flooding risk to fruition. A broader slight risk exists over here surrounding this area, stretches from northern Oklahoma up to the Missouri River region around the Nebraska-Iowa border, and then over to the east around the Mississippi River. We also have a moderate risk of excessive rainfall over here near the Allegheny Plateau into the Appalachians. That includes cities like Pittsburgh. Near record moisture over here in this area, which will bring rainfall possibly 3 inches, maybe 2 to 3 inches per hour in these areas. Rainfall rates up to, or rainfall amounts up to 5 inches locally in this region. The slight risk extends all the way down from eastern Kentucky to much of Pennsylvania. Day 2 through 5, marginal risk of excessive rainfall, mainly following that cold front and some other areas as well experiencing rainfall uh, associated with this cold front. And then day 4 and day 5, we have another disturbance coming in for some additional rainfall over here in the upper Midwest, and then finally to the Great Lakes region and to the New England region. Here is our fire weather outlook. Critical fire weather risks for cities like Albuquerque, Las Cruces, Rio Rancho, New Mexico. And no additional fire weather risk is expected from day 2 onwards. Now, I would like to touch on Tropical Storm Eric, which is right now in the Eastern Pacific. This is going to be our first hurricane that is going to make landfall, but it isn't going to make any impacts to the U.S., so I won't dwell on this a little bit. But potential impacts to southern Mexico over here. Potentially significant hurricane. The NHC is forecasting 100 miles an hour at landfall, but has noted that the rapid intensification levels or the rapid intensification probabilities are pretty high with this one, so they might be conservative with their forecasts. So if you happen to know anyone in this area of Mexico, please give them a heads up. This is going to be our first hurricane that is going to make landfall in any land region here in North America. Now here is our convective outlook. We have a moderate risk of severe thunderstorms over here in southwestern Kansas, touching northwestern Oklahoma here. This includes cities like Wichita, Hutchinson, Garden City. This is primarily for a destructive wind risk over here, our 45 hatched for this region in southwestern Kansas. We also have a significant hail risk for southern Kansas, possibly large to giant hail. And this significant hail risk also extends to the west into Colorado. That includes Colorado Springs, Pueblo. And we also have a few tornadoes possible with this 5% tornado risk. Here is our day 2 outlook. Enhanced risk of severe thunderstorms from southeastern Missouri into southern Michigan and into northwest Ohio. Includes cities like Indianapolis, St. Louis, Toledo. This is primarily for a damaging wind risk, and also some hail and a few tornadoes are possible. The tornado risk is particularly maximized closer to the surface low up here in the northern regime of the 5% because we have enhanced low-level wind fields, which is more conducive to tornadoes. And looking at our day 3 outlook, we have a slight risk of severe thunderstorms from North Carolina up to portions of New England, includes cities like New York City, Philadelphia, Baltimore. Primary risk is going to be damaging winds, especially with southern extent, but with northern extent closer to the surface low, with those enhanced surface fields, might get all hazards possible. Maybe a few tornadoes are also going to be possible on day 3, Thursday. Predictability is too low for our extended range severe weather outlook. Now, looking at our heat risk, right now it's kind of a relative lull, but we still have some heat over here in the Chihuahuan desert regions, as well as extending to the southern high plains, and also some heat still over here in the Sonoran desert regions in the southwest. Especially over here in Southern California, we have temperatures 110 degrees or higher in this region. So still pretty hot across here, and it will not stop for at least several days. Here in the east, in the mid-Atlantic regions, we have some heat ongoing today, and that will pretty much continue for a bit until the cold front passes, but then we'll get a reinvigoration of the heat later this week. But here, we expect temperatures well into the 90 degrees Fahrenheit. By midweek, we have a continuation of that heat in the mid-Atlantic, also a reinvigoration of heat over here into the west. But then by late week, we'll see kind of a shift and focus into the Central Plains area, where we'll see temperatures much above average, heat well into the 90s for much of these areas by late week. And then into the weekend, that heat caused by that upper level ridge pattern will move off into the east, and we'll see extremely above average temperatures for much of these regions over here. A lot of these regions will have temperatures well into the 90s, which is well above average, especially in this purple region right here. Then that heat will just extend and continue off to the east, bringing much above average temperatures, possibly uh, 10 to 15 degrees above average for much of these areas, especially in these purple regions. Here is our extended range hazard outlook. Now, you can tell that we're going to have heat because all of this area is just covered in red. That is our hazardous heat outlook for the extended range, covered in red. So that is going to be our main story for the next 3 to 7 days. But we also have severe weather risks over here associated with the passage of our cold front that's going to move off to the east. Also, some heavy rain possible for the upper areas. We call these ridge riders because we have this big upper level ridge that's going to set up over here, and then the enhanced flow will just ride around that. So these areas will experience some rainfall on top of that ridge that is going to be building and giving us some excessive heat in much of the eastern United States. Here's our 6 to 10 day temperature outlooks. June 22nd to 26th, much above average for the eastern U.S., much below average for the western U.S. That kind of gives us an idea of a trough ridge pattern, so perhaps even active weather for this upcoming week. 6 to 10 day precipitation outlook, above average precipitation for much of the central portions of the U.S. and below average for the East Coast. And then finally, we have our href paintball output. I use these to dictate the timing of storms. We have ongoing storms in Kansas, and that will sort of continue, possibly deplete off into the afternoon. But we have these storms forming off into the west, and that is going to invigorate and then move off to the southeast and grow upscale by later afternoon. It will arrive in Kansas at around our risk area by 4 p.m., 3 to 4 p.m. But then we have the secondary area of storms forming in Kansas in the late afternoon, maybe around 5 p.m. Central, which will be our main focus for a giant hail threat over here in Kansas. But the main wind threats will be these storms that formed off into Wyoming that will grow upscale, move off to the southeast, and possibly conglomerate into a few Boeing line segments, which will pack a big punch in terms of damaging winds. But these initial storms over here that'll form in the late afternoon, kind of pop up in the late afternoon, will primarily give us a large hail threat. But those storms that will move off into the mid to late evening into central Kansas is the ones to watch for those significant damaging winds. So more of the story, if you happen to be in central Kansas, watch out for some giant hail initially in the late afternoon. And then by the time the evening comes, you should expect some significant winds associated with another round of storms. So multiple rounds of storms expected today, and that is sort of reflected in our excessive rainfall outlook, since we're going to get multiple times where we'll get those enhanced rainfall rates on top of already saturated soils from yesterday's storms. So pretty prolific events ahead for these areas of central Kansas. But that is going to be it for today. If you enjoyed the video, please leave a like and possibly subscribe if you want. As always, if you have any constructive criticism, please leave them in the comments below. And again, as always, if you want any specific information regarding your area, please refer to your local National Weather Service or broadcast meteorologists. Thank you and have a great day.